I did that obnoxious thing of wishing everyone a happy Thanksgiving on Saturday. Way too early. But here we are, Thanksgiving week. This is our lone live show here at the BWI Live Show because of the schedule. So I just want to say to you guys, happy Thanksgiving. Appreciate everything you guys have done for the channel, for the show, and, for us and for the fans. So Fitz, Nate, thank you so much. Nate, how you doing today?
Happy New Year to you, T. Frank. I'd like to wish you a good Valentine's Day. We can wait. We can wait until the day of. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to be on the internet the day of. I'll be here tomorrow on our BWI Live Show for Wednesday. As always, that is our pre-recorded video, so this is our chance to interact with you, the fans. You got questions, you got things you want to know, you want to shout out the internet again. We got one more opportunity. We will be live on Friday, but it'll be our game day coverage, the tailgate show and the post-game show. Fitz, I always like to come to you last because I want you to start the show off for us, so same to you. Thank you for everything you've done for Blue White Illustrated. Happy Thanksgiving. How you feeling today about this final week?
Feeling okay. I think I just can't get the thought out of my mind of what kind of psychopath it would take to take a dinner roll over cornbread. But that's kind of where I'm stuck this week. So if you watched the press conference yesterday from James Franklin, you got it right. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. We're no school tomorrow. Obviously no school for the rest of the week. So I'm mentally preparing for the next couple of days, family time. It's going to be great. Love the family. But there's still a little bit of football to talk about Friday night at Ford Field. Not in this weather. It's horrendous out in State College right now. Not horrendous, but it's not nice out in State College.
Our first fall weather, really.
I mean, it's fall wintry mix type stuff. It all comes at once. I mean, that's how we do it in State College. So, but Friday night, Michigan State, a team in, as my old high school coach would say, in disarray. But they have won a couple in the last couple of weeks. So it's an interesting matchup, and it's one that I think Penn State fans circle every year because of the struggles that Penn State has had. Usually in East Lansing, so yeah. I think the neutral site helps, but it's still an intriguing matchup nonetheless with an offense, with the Penn State offense that's been sputtering like it has.
So Fitz, one really important thing that we have to get here: are we talking homemade rolls or rolls from the store, like you're buying the rolls? Because to me, there's a fundamental difference.
I think the inclination was like bought rolls. I mean, homemade rolls are fine, but if you're gonna do that, do biscuits. That's where we're at with this. So. We got a very
my family would vehemently agree. My whole childhood was built around rolls at Thanksgiving, so I am that psychopath. Unfortunately, I'm always. I feel like I'm always that psychopath. It checks out, right? Nate, what are you thinking about with this team to the end of the season? We're going to talk about the game on Saturday. We're going to talk about James Franklin's comments from yesterday. We're going to do some light previewing of this week. And I guess my biggest problem is I don't know how to think or feel about this particular game, given the locked nature of where Penn State is finishing the season. And, the incorrect reality that you're predicting a win against a team, as Fitz said, in disarray. So I don't want to say what's the point of this game, but what's the main thrust you're thinking about with this game, and deriving some sort of meaning from it?
I'm just gonna lean in to being me on this one and give you my soft sciences take, right? Okay. Because to me, this one is loaded with that, right? It is Thanksgiving. Campus is cleared out. It stinks to be at football practice this afternoon. Like those players are not having a great time for a final game of the season where their biggest goals have been eliminated, but also you still got to win, right? It is still important to the Penn State football program to win this game. And so I think that there's a little bit of fighting human nature in a game like this, where you are presumed to be the better program. I mean, obviously, right? I mean, in less disarray, certainly, right? You are expected to win this game, but also to do so, you have to do it on a short week against the team that's won 2 of 3, and probably, right? I mean, some of these teams that have had problems and are still playing hard at the end of the season. Like, to me, that's a scary thing. That's not a right? I mean, Michigan State could have packed it in October and
Yeah.
nobody would have blamed them for that. They're still playing, right? They beat an Indiana team that's always coached hard. You know, so there is something to that, I think, for this Penn State team to get through, because look, there is like it or not, there is still actually quite a bit on the line for Penn State. It's not a CFP berth, but it is double-digit wins for the 5th time in 8 years, right? A New Year's Six bowl game. Those things may not matter in fans' minds who are frustrated and disappointed by what feels like a plateau, but they do matter for national relevance. Right?
Yeah, and staying on that plateau, right? So that's that's the point, is to stay on the. But you're right. That's fighting the I guess the perception of it is a given, and it is never a given. That's the whole 1-0 thing. That's the whole point. Is it is not a given that you're going to win every game that you're supposed to win. One way you can do that, though, one way you can ensure that you get closer to that, you can't really affect your talent. What God gave you is what God gave you, but you can do everything in the margins to make yourself better. I was listening to Aeneas Hawkins on his podcast talking to Robert Windsor, and he said it doesn't matter in the NFL sometimes if you're the better player. There's a lot of other factors that go into getting on a roster. And for high school kids and for kids that want to get to the next level and play at whatever level you are capable of playing at, you need to be the best possible football player that you can be. And the way to do that is to train, and to train the little things. MMA FX is a hand fighting course taught by Bruce Lombard of Lombard MMA here in State College, but he's developed a video course to help people wherever you are in whatever situation you are in. He has taught some of Penn State's best NFL players. He's taught some of Penn State's coaches. He has taught some NFL teams, other college teams. His hand fighting course comes in 4 different sessions, or 4 different levels, 25 techniques and 60 drills to help you master how to use your non-dominant hand, make you a better overall functional athlete, have better body control, and as you can see here, have better reaction times. All of these things. Football is not a linear sport. The gym is really important. Weightlifting is super important, but translating all of those gains and gifts you get onto the field, you need to have a plan, you need to have techniques, and you need to be able to translate all of that into a football 3-dimensional sport, and that is what he can do. The system benefits defensive linemen, linebackers, and wide receivers primarily, but he has an offensive line course, and if you're looking for private coaching, he coaches the Penn State offensive line, he coaches Denai Dennis Sutton. I think they should start coaching the receivers as well to beat press. That has been a problem this year. Maybe they should have been with Bruce. Visit MMAFx.net to learn more today. Again, if you want to contact him for a free consultation, MMAFx one-on-one private trainings, small group trainings, Bruce at MMAFx.net. But one more time, the website, MMAFx.net. Nate, what was your impression when you got to go in and see all that stuff? Because I know that you and I really, at the start of this, it was us going to check out Bruce and what he does, and I was super impressed. What did you think?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. He actually has trained some receivers at Penn State. I think Deshaun Hamilton maybe spent some time with him. There are probably some others, but yeah, it's an impressive operation. And he's such a smart guy. He's so knowledgeable in the space, and it's a very unfamiliar space for me, but one that I think that actual athletes, would come to appreciate and enjoy.
So check out one more time, MMAFX.net. Fitz, we're getting into James Franklin's press conference, what he said yesterday. Nate and I had our conversation afterwards. We can check out here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. But let's start with the quarterback situation. Drew Allar off a short week, chance to play this week. And more generally, what are your thoughts on Beau being more involved in the offense and playing 2 quarterbacks without getting into the dreaded 2-quarterback system?
Yeah, that's the tricky part, isn't it? It's just they're not going to go drive for drive, but I think getting him involved is the way to go about it. Nate made some points after the game the other day about getting him in early in the game and not sticking with it, but just getting him in early in the game. It didn't seem like a Yurcich thing that he wanted to do. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. I mean, it's obvious, when you're talking about an injury, And Drew's didn't seem all that serious. James kind of, said he thinks he's going to play. You compare that to Indiana when they took Trey Wallace, who had the upper quadrant injury, if we say that, took him to the X-ray, got him in a sling, and all that kind of stuff. Drew was just kind of doing his own thing on the sideline, raising his arm. So, from that standpoint, it didn't seem to be a quote unquote serious injury. So, but we're going to get a chance to see them at practice this evening. But the Wednesday practice has been moved up to Tuesday. So, we'll hopefully have a little bit more on how much he's moving around and things like that. But yeah, I think you give it a shot. I think it gives you an opportunity to, sort of play closer to the ball. We've talked about the receivers and how they haven't really come through in the last couple of weeks. Play closer to the ball, run the ball, open some things up for Katron and Nick and see what you can do and sort of push it across the line. It's, you hate to make a late 2020 reference, but that's the way Penn State finished that season. They finished it with 4 wins, but they also finished it playing some very unpalatable football. So I'm curious to see if that's something they go to. But yeah, I agree. I think Beau should be in there more. I'm not sure where Drew is on the line of starting and all that kind of stuff, but I definitely think we would see him more.
So Ronald put this in the chat a little bit earlier, and I don't want to say I have some problems with the way with Ronald, but the question here I think generally is vague.
I would hope you don't have problems with Ronald, by the way.
Ronald, you and I got beef. But so I guess I don't want to undercut his question because it is a fair question of like the style of offense Penn State is running and 2 incongruent quarterbacks with different skill sets. That has been the whole thing all year. So he asks, if James Franklin knew the style of quarterback Drew was, why didn't he go to a pro-style offense and switch back to an RPO? You mean read option, just as an answer, just to clarify here for Beau. That's come up all year long. Fitz, what's the definition of a pro-style offense anymore? Because I think we think it's one thing, but I just don't know if we all have the same definition of what pro-style is. So how would you answer this question?
I don't want to say there's not a pro style, but the pro game has gone in so many different directions. I mean, you look at what Josh Allen has done in Buffalo, and it's not totally dissimilar to what Penn State has tried to do. They haven't pulled that off. But yeah, you've gone more from, pro style. I guess you would go with the traditional drop back, 3 receiver type look. But that's not really, you're sort of shooting yourself in the foot if you're just going to try and do that, especially with the array of receivers that Penn State has. So yeah. I don't know that there is an actual definition on this. Like this is it's constant evolution. And that's kind of why pro style offenses that are thriving right now in the pros are multiple variant, run. They
borrow a lot from college.
Yeah. They borrow. Yeah, you're exactly right. They borrow a lot from college. So you can run and a zone read in the pros. I don't know if you're going to be as successful, but there are elements to that in pretty much every offense in the NFL.
Yeah. And one of my takeaways, by the way, check out my film room to get some corrections on this, of what Penn State did in the game wasn't necessarily out of line. For you mentioned Buffalo. Jalen Hurts is obviously a different talent for the Eagles. They run a lot of zone read with the Eagles. These things that they did were more in line with just standard what teams do now than I think fans felt like, because they saw their 5-star quarterback running the football. That happens a lot for various different situations. But Nate, this is something that you and I talked about off air yesterday, and I just want to get in this conversation. This offense was built for both of them. They made concessions this year. James Franklin talked about that in the preseason of it's hard to build an offense that is tailored to both guys, and he felt like they had a good plan coming in to do that. Where are we now, as opposed to where he thought we were at the beginning of the season and the journey we took to get here now?
Well, isn't part of this process of elimination or addition, right? Isn't there some level of evolution that happens?
Yeah.
Right. And fool me once, right? Fool me twice. And so after how many games of the receivers not being able to execute to the level that is necessary, right? I mean, Illinois, wasn't that like kind of a perfect example of that, of receivers running the wrong routes, not catching balls, drops, right? And so you evolve, right? Some of this stuff you would love to do and they tried to do, but it didn't work, and not with any level of consistency. And so I don't know. It's funny that you brought up Hurts, just because I watched that game last night. He's not a like run first quarterback. He's a pocket passer, right? But also runs, also carries the football when they need it, and it creates a dynamic for that offense that is hard to stop. They're trying to do the same thing with Drew. That's what they had been doing for, I would argue, the last 3 weeks, maybe, getting Drew to run the ball just a little bit. It ended up burning them on Saturday where he got hurt. But overall, I don't think it's like this massive departure to that read option that you were talking about, T. Frank. Like, it's not, it's not that. It doesn't seem to me. So I don't know. Maybe it is a hybrid of Frankenstein. I'm not. That's your realm. You can handle that. But from my perspective, it just seems like this is a situation where Penn State thought it had one thing, tried to get that to come along, and at this point, and you and I talked about this after the game, T. Frank, win the game. Right. However that looks, it is not about anything beyond that. It's not about Beau's development as a passer. It's not about anything other than get the win.
Yeah. That's been tough. I guess that's the thing. You look at the Rutgers game, and up until Drew's injury, the conversation was this passing attack needs to look more efficient and cohesive. And then, the rest of the season, does it matter? Is it just getting the win? This is something that has come up, Fitz, that I want to address. Drew Allar's confidence, whatever that particular means. We've talked about this multiple times this year, from the post-Indiana situation through the Maryland game into some of the other games. James Franklin has been asked about Drew Allar's confidence throughout the season, and James Franklin always maintains that he thinks Drew plays with confidence. So what do you think we've been seeing in the differences that seem apparent to everybody, that if it's not confidence, what do you think that it is with Drew that has been a game-to-game thing of whether he's on or not?
That's a tough one, because I wouldn't label it as confident. I would label it as trying to be exact, and that is something that's been, I think, really hurting him in terms of like, hey, this guy is supposed to be here at the Cephas route earlier, which was an option type of route, I guess, on the outside, which Cephas went straight at the defender and sort of sat down, which I'm not sure why he did that, but obviously Drew was expecting a comeback to the sideline. Drew was expecting that comeback to the sideline. That's where the ball is going. And it's just the rigidity that we see in that game doesn't scream confidence. I mean, he's confident he can get the ball there. Like, he's confident he can get the ball anywhere.
Yeah.
The issue is, I think that they're kind of like so far apart in what they're doing that there's just no continuity. There's no rhythm or anything like that. You saw them coming out the first play this weekend, throw that little, was that to Theo, the first pass of the game? That's a rhythm establisher, and you just never really kept up with that. So I think there's elements of confidence we saw in the Maryland game. Like, when he thinks when he's rolling, like it was that way with Clifford as well. When he's rolling, he can put the ball wherever he wants to put the ball. Whether those get caught or not, it's hard to say. But I think when he's confident, he's a good quarterback. When he's not, he's like sort of staring the worst case scenario in the face and wondering what's going to happen. And I don't know if that's been coached into him. I don't know if that's been something that, has been sort of drilled into his head, as we saw over the first 9 games of the season, or 8 games of the season, actually. It's tough to sort of put your finger on, because I think there's elements of confidence, but there's also elements of don't screw this up. And that's how we've gotten here.
So the same conversation we can have about Nick Singleton and Nate. For the record, we haven't talked about this off air. Our video went a little long, so I cut that particular part of our conversation out. So I want to have it again here about Nick Singleton, and his game so far this year has been another part where James Franklin has pushed back on the public narrative of what Nick Singleton has done, pointing to a more well-rounded football player versus the guy who gets the stats and big plays. And what's your thought on just that, Nick Singleton and his season versus what James Franklin wants to say, which is the positive route of look at all the things he's good at versus the box score stats. How do you come down on that conversation?
Yeah, I think there are parallels, I think, between both of those players, right? In terms of their trajectory as football players, Drew is doing all of the little things well, like a ton of little things well, really, truly. And maybe they're not little things, maybe they're huge things, right? Not turning over the football, whether anybody thinks that's sexy or not, is a big deal. That's huge, right? It is a big deal. You know, Nick, in his pass blocking, run blocking, you name it, different things, catching the ball out of the backfield. He's doing a lot of those things well that weren't things he was particularly strong at last season. Right. The vision of Nick last year, it was funny because it's almost like Nick caught up to, or is catching up to, all of the stuff that Katron did last year and got no credit for. Right. Like that was part of that storyline last season was, oh, Nick, this home run hitter, and what a great running back. Why, not why give Katron carries, because certainly that made itself overwhelmingly clear through the season that Katron did all of those things, but people didn't talk about them in the same light. They just didn't.
Yeah.
But James Franklin was pounding the table last year. Hey, Katron is a good football player. He arrived as not a finished product necessarily, but a much more well-rounded running back. He knew how to play that position.
Professional running back when he got here, because he just the little, as you mentioned, the little things. He was so much farther ahead than most, not just Nick, but most freshman running backs. His vision, all those things.
Yep. And so Nick has been able to develop in those areas. I'm not saying that it's 100%, right? That there isn't more room for him to grow. There definitely is. But also it's just how do you make all of those gains and then unlock that next level that he was able to show last year? I mean, look, the way that Franklin laid it out yesterday was he was speaking about it as though they were hypotheticals, talking about how people see 4 big runs in a game and they're like, oh man, that guy had a great game. But then you look back on film and he didn't have a great game.
Yeah.
That was Nick in some of those circumstances, that right. They weren't complete efforts. And now they are more along those lines. He's not taking losses in the backfield. He's always picking up 3 or 4 yards for the most part. Those are good things. Those are good things for him. It's just a matter of, all right, what is it going to take to get that instinct back? Like that.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's the Allar, like, confidence is the wrong word to me. It's not confidence. Yeah. It's instinct. It's playing with feel. It's playing like
not thinking,
neither one of those,
reacting with the correct answer, knowing the answer and just playing. Right.
Correct. And we'll see where that is in their futures for both of those guys. But I think it's certainly something that there is reason to believe it's in there. It's in those guys. It's just a matter of unlocking it.
Fitz, I think it's fair to say, just, kind of going off what Nate said, if you look at the film and check out all what we've said about Nick all year, is he's finding the right hole technically. Like, that's where the ball is supposed to go. His understanding of how to play the position is better. So is this year of frustration and what it was for him, knowing there's a bowl game, and that bowl game was a big thing last year for setting up just the special we were expecting from Nick Singleton this year. Is this year that area of growth, doing the hard things, and do you expect in the future that guy comes out a complete player? Is this kind of the Micah Parsons learning to play linebacker so that he can be a generational player later for Nick?
Yeah, I mean, you hope so. Like, you can't say for sure, but you hope so, because you've seen it in the past, and that's the problem with, like, sort of that hindsight springboard into next season, is because we've seen so many things that sort of mask. It's sort of like the scoreboard earlier this year. It masked the issues that they were having because they were scoring 40-some points a game. Like, you say, hey, this team's scoring 41 points, they must be a good offense. Not necessarily. Nick getting those big runs and doing some great things in the process. Like the way that he learned to run inside last year in front of our eyes, like on a week-to-week basis, was awesome. But you could still see the development in there. So yeah, I think you got to lean on. You hope you see that, because I think there is talent there. It's just how much of that does he need to shake? I mean, you look at that run that he got to the outside, which I think that, you know, he got banged up on the end of that play, took his head off the turf or whatever. But getting him into open space like that gives you that sort of muscle memory where you can sort of recapture what you're used to. And that's a guy that was used to bouncing stuff outside when he was a high school runner and running away from people. And we talk about how the most efficient run is, you know, the one that is cut up back inside. You see that in the pros every week. You see that in the college game every week. But sometimes you just like to see one bounce and see like that sort of thing come back to him, you know. And I think that's been the frustrating part, especially when you see it. And we've talked about him being sort of overcoached into this. You see a cutback lane where he had an end zone the other day, like that was down in the red zone. He had one cutback lane going to the end zone, and it's just not even registering. And that's a vision issue. Like he needs to get better at that. But at the same time, it's just like it's like LeBron pointing, you know, it's right there. It's right there. Yeah. And,
but he's like, hey, I'm following the center. The center had the reach block. I got to go this way. And then, but you know,
this is where I'm supposed to go.
Yes. And it's what Nate said. It's what I said earlier about these guys, that the instinct has sort of, I don't want to say the instinct's been coached out of them, but like you're so convinced on what you're supposed to do, where you're supposed to be. It's like, okay, I'm coaching a youth basketball team and we're running an offense, and this kid is supposed to go set a screen on where this guy is supposed to be, and that guy is not there, but he still runs to that spot and sets the screen on nobody. That's what we're looking at right now. That is the like sort of how we have gathered this offense right now. And I get it. It's very frustrating. You see talent in these guys, you see these flashes, and you just, it's like, just get over that line. And 11 games into the season, is anything going to change? No. I mean, you're not changing the scheme. You're not changing the type of offense that you run just because you have different guys playing or different guys calling the game. But that's kind of what you got to go with on this last one. And that's why I'm looking forward to seeing Beau. You know, it's not a situation where I don't think that you put yourself in danger of losing the game by throwing another guy out there. But you know, you can sort of help these other guys recapture what they're looking for, because that's sort of the instinct that they had last year with Sean Clifford.
I want to just one quick point. Nate, go ahead. Actually, go ahead.
I just, Fitz, you saying that nothing's going to change 11 games into the year. For what it's worth, they did change in the second half of that game on Saturday. They have not had. They had 6 explosive runs in the second half of that game. That is more explosive runs than they've had for games all season, other than the Delaware game. Like that is a something like a window into possibility, I think, you know, depending on who is on the field for those types of things to be unlocked. I mean, I think that it's understood why they haven't had the seasons that anyone thought they would have in terms of explosiveness, but there's a glimmer. there was something there in that second half. It wasn't an accident. And I think it was fairly directly tied to Beau Pribula, to be honest with you.
I hope you're right. Like I'm talking from a framework structure. Like you're not changing the playbook. Like you're not changing.
No.
That's
no,
what
I'm saying the results.
But you're right. Yeah, the results. Hey, when a safety has to sit back there and actually worry about the quarterback keeping the ball, and he's got to sit on his heels for an extra quarter of a second, that stuff matters. And that's what we saw. I mean, the 39-yard run right off the bat there, that makes a difference. And even Drew running, like we can talk about Beau all you want, but even Drew running gives you some sort of pause to open a little bit, just a little bit more. And I think that's what they've been looking for.
Especially against the coverages they've seen. And I probably harp on one or two things I learn each year too much, but quarters has been a big part of the season of teams, at the very least, starting with 2 high safeties and saying you're not going to throw the ball deep. Whether they rotate down into the box and how they rotate one of those guys is a different story. But that to your point, Fitz, that 39-yard run, Rutgers rotated their safety. The safety was too aggressive, and he got caught inside. And Beau can make you pay for that. So there is that different element he brings to the table. But Drew was still able to, if you play 2 high safeties and you are covering the spread formation, it was an empty chasm in the middle of the football field. And for James Franklin, I think the point was, what was happening before was they would just run the running back into that look and you would get moderate results. But if you add in the running back as a fullback, as a lead blocker, suddenly you get 10 free yards and run them out of those looks. If the quarterback has to run, sure, but then we can throw the football because they're less likely to go into those looks. Now, Rutgers didn't really adjust at any point in the game, but that's all kind of in the film review. I do need to get to now the next stage in your life, and that could be at My Perfect Franchise. If you're ready to leave your corporate job for the American dream, maybe you have a massive amount of a wealth of information and knowledge and experience, and it's just going to waste. You're just doing the same job every single day. Maybe you're looking for a side hustle. You're an entrepreneur. You crave that being on the edge, right? Diversify your wealth, build a legacy, any of those things. My Perfect Franchise can help you out with that. If you're listening on the podcast, 404-973-9901. I'll give that to you at the end as well. Whether things are booming in the economy or they're on the downslope, there's always something in business that is growing. It's never all dead. At least that's what Andy was telling me about what last time we talked about what's going on in the business world. High inflation, high interest rates, people aren't moving. So housing, maybe you're not selling houses, but you're definitely remodeling. And I can tell you, I've been remodeling my house quite a bit. So he has personal experience. Whatever your skill set is, managing franchises, he's ready to find what you're good at. So check out myperfectfranchise.net for your potential future. And it's 100% free consultation. If you want to go check it out, the Blue White Illustrated message board, he's always available there, or Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. And that number is 404-973-9901. Also today, a sponsor of the show, and this is a special one for the holiday season because, as I can tell you, I can hear my in-laws in the kitchen talking to my wife right now. I'm feeding everybody all week long. So I need an easy out. And at lunch, I don't want to think about what I'm eating. And that's great because Factor, the number one pre-made meal box service in America, has teamed up with us for the holiday season. Nate, I know you got a box. I made specifically sure that our food critic, because Nate is the best person to talk about with food, whether these things were good or bad. And Nate, your opinion on Factor and the quality of food you were getting in their pre-made stuff.
Our chubby-cheeked contributor, Nate Bauer.
Nate, I want to stop you there. Because if anyone has been on the Blue White Illustrated message board and somebody says, hey, what's the food like in State College? Nate has an opinion. It's not just like, That's true. Here's my favorite spot. He's saying, these are good restaurants. We don't have diversity. You have intelligent thoughts about food. So
That's true. That's true.
Did you
usually I say the food stinks?
Well, I wanted,
but Factor does not stink. Legitimately, they are. Box comes in, it's awesome. It's like cold packaged. Everything is neatly organized, and then literally the food itself. There's a variety of it that you can choose from, and it's good. You throw it in. I'm not a microwave guy. I like to throw things in the oven. Throw it in the oven. You get a better quality. It's just a better quality than the microwave option. But my wife has tried them. She's at work and has to have a quick lunch. She throws them in the microwave, 2 minutes. She loves them. So yeah, I was coming from a place of having all the time in the world to prepare my food during the day. Most days for my career. Yeah. 20, it doesn't matter. That's a separate conversation. The notion of a quick meal also being quality is very, very foreign to me. That wasn't something that I immediately gravitated to, but actually trying these, they're legit. They're legit. Yeah. They fill you up. They have lots of different options, gluten-free, low carb, you name it. There's all of it. And it's all literally every meal that I've had. I had a pork chop yesterday afternoon, done in 15 minutes. It was awesome. So yeah, highly recommended. And please send me more, Factor. Thank you.
They're dietitian approved and chef prepared. So these are experts in the field of food trying to give you a good meal, as Nate said, without all the prep, because I like to cook. I love to cook, but when I don't have time, prep makes me want to cry. And this is the number one thing in the middle of the day when I'm trying to get these videos up, trying to get extra stuff for you, watching film, and I just need to shovel food in my mouth. These were excellent for that. So if that's the holidays for you, and you need to take one of the meals literally off your plate and put a different one on, Factor is the way to go. There's too many different styles, as Nate said, for us to list right now. So you can go, and this is the best way to do it. Head to factormeals.com /BWI to use promo code BWI50 to get 50% off. And if I said that wrong, it's here on the YouTube channel. Great reason to go. Factormeals.com /BWI50, and you'll get 50% off your order. So go to factormeals.com /BWI50 so you can check out some of the stuff that Nate and I had over the last couple of weeks. And just free up some RAM in your head. That's the other thing, is like not having to think about what you're eating. You can make other decisions as well. Let's get into the other part of the conversation from James Franklin's press conference, which was the relief of what was happening versus what happened in Rutgers. And we're going to talk more about the change from Mike Yurcich. And Fitz, I'm interested to get your thought on the too many plays conversation that we had yesterday with James Franklin, and making the playbook as lean as possible and making it as user friendly for the players. We're getting kind of a list of all the things that James Franklin didn't like by the positives he's talked about. What were your thoughts on this whole conversation with how the two guys, Ty Howle and J1 Seider, did on Saturday against Rutgers?
Yeah, I think he's happy with the way that it went, just in the fact that they sort of move forward and move past all this stuff. There's still, I think, far too many miscommunications, which is, lends itself to that conversation about having too many plays, being too complex, and things that guys, especially on the outside, have struggled with. So I think that anything that you can do to get away from that is positive. Again, I'm back on you're not going to change your framework. You're not going to change your structure, your scheme, and everything like that. But you can simplify it. You can dummy it down all you want, and you can still beat these teams. And because you are better than Michigan State, you need to establish what you're trying to do, and you figure out your quarterback situation, obviously. But you're better than Michigan State, and you can make it happen without trying to do so much. And trying to do so much is sort of the theme of Mike Yurcich, right? Like, you look at the way that they've done things, and the way that you came away feeling after those games, watching that there was no continuity, that there was nothing that you could go to that, like, hey, couple of runs, all right, time to get the passing game going. That having writing and saying the same exact things over and over again is obviously not good for anyone.
Yeah.
But if you can make it more concise, I think I would say, then and get away with it. Nate nailed it. Get it across the line. Like, winning football games is hard. I don't think people accept that, but winning football games is hard, especially going on the road in a different environment like a pro stadium this weekend. There are going to be certain challenges. Now, you have the ability to overcome them by being the better team, but at the same time, if you can simplify that as much as possible, sort of shrink that down as much as possible, and it's like you're packing your car for a trip. You get everything into certain number of bags, and that is how you get to the destination, not by overloading everything. So that's a bad metaphor.
A great analogy.
I don't know.
No,
it really wasn't. It was. I told you, I'm thinking of Thanksgiving break, and that's where I'm at with this. And I'm wondering how I'm going to pack all these kids and dogs and everything. Anyway,
it is like, to a certain point, Fitz. Like, you have to make sure that you have everything you need. You need to make sure you look good at dinner when you go out, but you don't need 17 options. You need to choose what is the best possible option for you. And much lower stakes when you're packing your suitcase until you have to pay for all the gigantic suitcase. I like that one a lot.
Okay, we can go with that. It sounded like an ad read too. So if we got any suitcase people that want to send us suitcases, that'd be great. But no, I think that's what you got to do, is you make it simple as possible. And I think if you do have Beau out there, in an extended role, again, we don't know if he's going to start. We don't know if he's going to, really play extensively or anything like that. But if you do have him out there, while it does throw the wrench in that there's two different quarterbacks playing, it is a system that these guys are familiar with.
The part of this that comes up next is the new offensive coordinator, and literally what comes next for Penn State in the offseason. Manny Diaz, his options. We talked about this yesterday on the post press conference video. But I guess, Nate, this is my problem, is that I'm fixated on fixing the passing game. Putting Beau behind center doesn't fix the passing game. Trying to fix it with Drew, I thought was the point of the final 2 games. And like, I'm left without a point of like, okay, what's the 1% better this week? And it is, as you have said, we've just kind of hammered this home. It's get across the finish line. But how do you make, do you not care about making these games appealing and finishing strong, and what that means for being attractive to receivers in the portal? Because they absolutely need to get receivers in the portal. And to an offensive coordinator, just the general vibe around, hey, Penn State is not a place where offense goes to die. You don't want to start to get that particular persona. So does that matter? And then just generally the coordinator search, how much does that immediately alleviate that if you get the right guy?
A few things. Recruiting is just sales, right? And so sales can be 2 different things, right? Look at this that we have established and you can join that, or look at what we can't do without you, right? Like look at how our hands are tied until you join us. And so like this player is the ticket to us being able to do what we want to do, and what we want to do just happens to align exactly with what you want to do, receiver X, right? So like that's a big part of this. I think that there is, look, I think that, I don't know. I'm willing to say this and be wrong if you guys disagree with me. I don't think that the 65 offensive plays that happen in a game are remotely in the same category of development as the thousands that happen in practice, right? Like there are 15 bowl prep practices coming up just on the other side of this Friday. There is all that opportunity, like that notion of, hey, fix the passing game in season, when it is very evident that there are some handicaps that won't allow them to do that, right? Go back to the drawing board on December 1st, right? Get your ducks in a row for that kind of stuff once you get into bowl prep. And then certainly, obviously, on the backside of it, you have all winter, you have all spring, you have all summer. So I just think that yesterday was interesting in the notion of, all right, here are the breadcrumbs of things that Penn State did well, that James Franklin was talking about. Hey, here's what they did well. And the undertone is, here's what Mike Yurcich and here's what previously was not going well. But I think it is a very fair assumption that things that they're looking for out of the next offensive coordinator match precisely with the things that James Franklin said he liked about Saturday, right? Like that. I mean, I pulled them out yesterday because I thought it was so interesting just doing it in checklist form, meeting the explosive play goal and third down goal. He said that hadn't happened. He couldn't remember the last time that happened, right? That's a problem. Having one missed assignment in the game offensively. When was the last time, right? Constant missed assignments. This was an undersold one, I think, in terms of our attention to it, making Rutgers defend the whole field.
Yeah.
Right. Returning to successful plays, forcing the defense to adjust. I mean,
I want to put a caveat on that one, doing it correctly, because Mike Yurcich would come back to the same play over and over again, but didn't do it the way that got success, apparently.
Yep. So I just think that it was a fairly instructive moment if you parse through 45 minutes of a press conference and actually pull those out of what he was actually saying. Hey, here are things that were deficiencies. And again, it's just so important to not be so one-sided about this, to not acknowledge and recognize that this is an offense under Mike Yurcich that did have success. There were successful elements of it. There were things that went well, but also not enough. Not enough and not consistently.
This is, and if you check out tomorrow's show, this is a big takeaway from me, is being a successful offensive coordinator is not just about play design. It's not just about coming up with the best option to beat the defense you're going to face. There are a lot of things that James Franklin has ticked off in the last week or so that you just got to. Some of them we didn't get to today, on that checklist of things that go into being an offensive coordinator that he laid out in the response to the direct question about were you not getting these things from Mike Yurcich. All of that leads into the execution of the game plan. Stephen Light here. I put this up earlier, but I just wanted to give him a shout out because he's always here late to the party. Have a great Thanksgiving, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well. Greg Fischel, just cleaning up things in the chat. He says, pardon my ignorance, but could either quarterback enter the transfer portal? Yes, either quarterback could enter the transfer portal. Fitz, I want to get your thoughts on this conversation.
I don't think that's what he was asking. Yes, any quarterback can enter. I don't think either do. Like, I think this is
technically.
Yeah.
I was answering the technical side.
Yes,
they're allowed.
They're allowed. Yes, they are. I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't get caught up in the Beau loves Penn State more than anything in the world sort of narrative that's out there that you could argue that why he wouldn't. I know teams have been watching Beau to hope that he enters the portal because they want a shot at him, and it's not Ohio State, it's not Michigan, but teams are certainly aware that they think that he can play quarterback at this level. So, but you keep both those guys happy, and that's one reason you put him in the game and really ride what he's good at, and then you get this refresh, you get this whole reset with the new OC, and it gives you a chance to sort of put everybody back at square one, which I think we could all agree this is kind of what that offense needs, is a total reset, because that's we're once again at the end of the season and it's not happening, it's not working. Mm-hmm. So total reset's all you got at this point. So anyway, getting from there and going to it. I think him being from Pennsylvania does help, but I don't really think it's something that ultimately, if he finds a better opportunity or hears of a better opportunity, it's not something that you should lean on incredibly. Maybe that's something that comes out would be public, but not on the private things, not on the private side of things. So, it's going to depend on the hire to figure out what fits with this. It's going to depend on sort of how far behind you think he is. If Beau is in a situation where, Jackson Smollett's nipping on his heels and Drew is so far ahead of him that he's going to be the starter, that is an intriguing option for him. So I don't think you can rule it out. I don't think it's going to happen, but I don't think there's any way that you can rule it out.
Can I?
Go ahead.
I was just going to very quickly, and this is in no way meant to be derogatory or anything along those, disrespectful, certainly. But if you're Penn State, you can't worry about losing Beau Pribula. That can't be your mindset, right? That can't you have to prioritize making Drew Allar work. That has to be overarchingly in terms of what's important to the program's long-term future and immediate success. You got to make Drew work. This has to hit. It has to happen. And so you are doing all of the things in your power to make Beau and Jackson Smollett feel like they are being developed, that they're getting a fair shake, that they're all of those things. NIL is part of this, right? That's just being real. Those are all elements that are important. And I think Penn State's done a good job with those elements. But you got to be able to call a spade and say, hey, Drew has to work. This is not an option for Drew to not work out at Penn State.
Yeah. Fitz, just a general recruiting thing. You got Ethan Gronkmeyer committed. And you've got kind of this couple steps forward in the passing game when you look from a recruiting perspective and looking from a talent perspective that Nate is laying out here. How do you think that how this is played out affects at all? Some, none? Because I know I've asked you this a couple of times this year, but the offensive coordinator, whoever it is, could reset all of this. And that's kind of the positive springboard into the end of the year. But trying to get all of these things to get back on track of keeping that momentum going at the most important position in football. How on the edge is this, do you think? Because we can talk about the things around it that could cause problems. And if there's a problem, do you think that there is potentially a problem here with keeping that positive spin going with the way things went this year?
I mean, I think that's a separate question than quarterback recruiting and things like that, because it's the same question that the fan base has: is how you're going to beat Ohio State and Michigan. Schedule changes, slightly next year, but it's still going to be how do you beat the best teams on your schedule, and continue to do everything that you need to do against the teams that you're supposed to beat. So I don't think it changes all that much. Again, fresh start is what you're going to do. Was asked last week about portal recruiting for wide receivers. Why would anyone want to come to Penn State if you see what's out there in the field? Well, you just wipe that away and say, hey, we got a new offense coming in. It fits what you do. And sometimes we give guys a little too much credit here. Like this is selling promises. This is what recruiting is. Like you can call it whatever you want to call it, spin or whatever, but this is selling that. So that is how they're going to do it. I don't think everyone's going to agree with it. And I don't think that the fans here in our chat are going to say, well, I mean, Franklin's been here so long that, you haven't had this, but you can also flip that on its head and say, hey, John Dotson was a first round pick a couple of years ago. Chris Godwin was one of the best receivers in the NFL. Like we can produce receivers in that time period that Franklin has been here. So it's kind of, shining up whatever you want to shine up and making that appealing to some. They just got to pick the right guys. They got to pick the guys that can come in and go right away. Like this is not a situation where you want to bring in more guys that need a year to get accustomed to the system and get him here in January, get him here in spring practice.
I want to put an end to this particular part of the conversation. Julius is here all the time, and he keeps making this point. And I just want to point out the other side of this, Julius. He says, do you realize in the last decade, Alabama gave up on 3 blue-chip quarterbacks, including the can't-miss Blake Barnett, who lost his job to Jalen Hurts. They also had other 5-star talent. Penn State is not recruiting 5 stars at the same level. So yeah, Ohio State can lose Joe Burrow and be fine. Penn State has gotten a couple of these guys. And to just say, go back to Beau Pribula, and this is going to sound disrespectful, and it's not, but like, if you go back to Beau Pribula, you are going back to the same place that you were with Trace McSorley, which if you go by the record and what happened from a great player who maximized everything he was still not getting you to Alabama, which is what you're comparing yourself to. So the best option is to get one of these quarterbacks that has the talent by the idea of recruiting and understanding the position and understanding the tools to make that guy work. What Nate said, Drew Allar has to work because you're not Alabama. You don't have 5-star wide receivers that are just, you're falling out of your pockets. You have to make this guy work for a lot of those reasons. So I know Jalen Hurts wasn't a 5-star, but the idea of comparing Alabama to Penn State in this situation is absolutely a fraudulent apples and oranges comparison. Let's move on and let's talk about the last thing, which is I just think we should spend a couple of minutes here at the end of the show appreciating the Penn State defense one final time. Because we spent 52 minutes and 50 seconds talking about the offense. And then the defense, once again, pitches basically a shutout, 2 field goals, but they have been excellent. We expect them to be excellent one more time this weekend. Fitz, I want to come back to you just specifically. Shout out to your guy, Kevin Winston Jr. His development as a safety, the interception, culmination of a lot of hard work for him. But the defense in particular, what has been your favorite part to watch this year in one of the parts of this team, I should say, that has been fun to watch?
I like that it's always someone different. Like you look at the stat book and it's like the least impressive like tackle number and everything like that, because it's so spread out because of the way that they've run their rotations and things like that. Nobody's like has these standout numbers, but you clearly see that these are standout football players. Going to miss Chop a lot. Yeah. Like cannot overstate how much they're going to miss Chop Robinson, not just as a pass rusher. When he is out there, that defensive line is completely different. But they do, have a lot to lean on coming back. Thought Kobe King played another good game the other day. Abdul Carter's back there. And yes, thank you for mentioning KJ Winston. He's a stud, man. Like it is a situation where you've got, I think, a lot of the physical pieces, and you can see it. You can see him prior to the game. Like he's sort of night and day than where he was early in the season. And that's certainly the way that you want to go out. You look at the pick that he had, and it was not the exact same play that Penn State got burned on in the Indiana game where they blitzed the corner and nobody picked it up. But they blitzed 2 corners off the edge. They blitzed Johnny Dixon from the slot. They blitzed Kalen King from the outside, and he had 1 read. Wimsatt had 1 read, and that was to try and get the ball outside as quick as possible. And KJ Winston baited that dude and came straight into it. It was like artwork. Like Manny knows his shit. Like that is where he is right now. He is calling things really well. And when you've got the players to back it up, it's certainly entertaining to watch. And again, completely taken for granted this season. You could say they wasted an elite defense. I think that's partially true, but really taken for granted how good that defense is.
Nate, I don't know, give you the what's next because we talked about that the other day, but what have you seen from this defense that makes you think that it's going to continue no matter what?
They're young. That's it. No, they're young, and I think Manny will be back. And so I think that a lot of the hand-wringing, it's like, this is a generational defense. And I think that it is a very, very good defense. I think it also has an opportunity to be very, very good next year. I think that a ton of pieces will be back. A lot of them are just growing into their roles, right? I mean, Kobe King is a different player today than he was last year at this time and has the opportunity to continue to get better, right? Denai, Jameel Lyons. I mean, it's pretty exhaustive, right? It's a comprehensive picture of where this group is and where it can go. And I do think that they very much have the potential to be formulaically, is that a word?
Sure.
Formulaically the same type of defense. They can run Manny's defense next year using that same ball skill defensive backs paired with aggressive defensive front that can capitalize, right, and maximize its opportunities. I mean, I do think that there is a gotta resolve the third down and long situation. It's not anecdotal at this point. It happens. They got to be able to get off the field more in those circumstances.
They stopped the Prowler package and they still gave up a 3rd and long run. Like I was like, well, at a certain point, like this is just in the DNA. I don't know.
Yeah. So, but other than that, no, it's very, very good. And as long as it stays good, Penn State's offense is given the runway to develop. It has that opportunity. This is a defense that can keep you in games, whether you're good offensively or not. You just want to be able to see it for Penn State on the offensive side of the ball, take those strides to match up, to get from, whatever we're going to call it, a C level, get it up to a B plus so that you compare that B plus with the defense's A. And again, something that we don't talk nearly enough about, special teams is A, right? Like you've got
speak
high
for yourself
quality.
There,
what do you mean?
That's all I talk about. Special teams.
Okay.
That's my thing. You ever noticed that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Fitz, it looked like you had something to say there.
No, I was just talking about special teams.
Okay. All right.
So Falcons has been awesome. Riley Thompson has been awesome. Gabe Nwosu, who didn't cut it last game. Falcons came in and did his thing. Nwosu has been very good. I mean, it's just Stacey Collins, man. I think I got asked in the 2nd or 3rd week of the season if he's on the chopping block. Pretty definitively not on the chopping block. He's done an awesome job.
So you said this, and I think the presence of a superstar player can change things in such a big way for one particular position. Chop Robinson leaving, I think, is a big deal. Last thing I want to get from Fitz is the corner position, because I think that could be the one thing that could hold them up next year. What do you just generally the talent they have on the roster is pretty good, right? Like, what do you think of those guys from the way they've been able to recruit, even if they've missed some of the top targets they've gone after the last couple of years? Like, they still have enough. Do they have enough talent that if those guys progress, they can get this done?
That was amazing, by the way, because I was thinking about corners when Nate was talking about ball hawking, and then I moved to special teams and it completely flew out of my mind. So I don't know how you did that, but
we were thinking the same thing
right there. It's okay. It's not at the spot that it is right now. I think you're pretty obviously going to lose King, Dixon, and Hardy. Hardy, obviously a very important part of this defense. I'm not sure where you go with that. Do you go King Mack in the slot next year? I don't know. But you've got Cam Miller, you've got Zion Tracy, who they're really high on. Like I think they think that he can be in that too deep to starter role next year. But I don't know if you want to like lean on that. Like you go out and find, they went out and found Storm Duck last year in the portal, and it didn't work out. But at the same time, like they recognize a situation where it looks good on paper, but maybe you'd like a little bit more of insurance there. So I think they do go out and look in the portal for a corner. Terry's always looking for corners. I mean, that's high school portal, whatever it's going to be. He's going to take all that he can get. It's such an important position. It'll be interesting to see if they can get a marquee guy to come in. Corner is going to be expensive. Offensive line is going to be expensive. Defensive end, defensive tackle. This is going to be a situation where you're going to have a lot of competition, especially with the way that the portal works and the certain windows that they have open this year. So that's going to be the goal. I think corner is certainly up on the list in terms of where you're looking at for the portal coming off this year, because they feel okay about corner next year, but you'd love to feel great about it.
Yeah. You'd love to keep that level, maintain that level of excellence that you've had, and I think that's the one wild card for me. Because in the chat, everyone's mentioning Tony Rojas. That's a great point of where is he going to factor in next year. They're going to have great linebackers, Zane Durant. There's too many guys for us to talk about here. We've gone over our time, so I just want to say thank you guys for all of what you've done so far this year for Blue White Illustrated. This has been an excellent season of coverage, and I think we've done all of that because of your efforts on something that I really appreciate you guys doing this with me. So, Nate, thank you. I know you're going all shucks, but thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, stop. You're the best, T. Frank.
Well, we're going to end on that. I'm the best. We'll be back tomorrow with the Keystone Kickoff Show on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. I'll be breaking down the game from Rutgers. We didn't really talk a whole lot about the game. There's some interesting things there from a schematic perspective that I talked about in the film room. You can check it out there. We'll be talking about that tomorrow. And then, of course, we'll have our pregame coverage with myself and Aeneas Hawkins, and then the postgame show, which will be coming up after the game. So that'll do it for today. The BWI Live Show. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Have a happy Thanksgiving, and we'll talk to you later.